When a wealthy imam follows her nanny home, she discovers a shocking truth that changes everything. The sun was setting with an eerie glow that cast deep shadows over the luxurious streets of Silver Springs. There she was, Laura Vale, a woman of means, sipping her espresso and watching the chaos unfold. Her nanny, a petite figure named Mia, was supposed to be just that, a nanny. But today, curiosity gripped Laura in a vice. She'd noticed something peculiar. Every evening, when Mia thought no one was looking, she slipped away with a hurried glance back, as if the walls could whisper secrets. As Laura followed silently, a tightening in her chest made her breath hitch. What was Mia hiding? The streets grew darker, the air heavier. A shiver danced down Laura's spine as she stepped into a shadowed alley where Mia darted in. The noise of the city faded into a hushed silence. Here, things felt wrong, like something secret and sinister was lurking, waiting to pounce. She peeked around the corner and saw Mia talking animatedly with a man dressed in a worn-out leather jacket. His face was hidden beneath the brim of a featured cap, but the way he leered sent chills through Laura's veins. The man's gestures were frantic, animated, like a puppet in a twisted play. What could they be discussing that made Mia agitated? Was it just a simple matter, or something far more dangerous? Just as Laura leaned forward for a better view, a shrill sound pierced the quiet, a cry that shattered the tension. It came from the dark, damp corners of the alley, echoes of pain and fear reverberating off the brick walls. Her heart thudded painfully against her ribs. She had to see if Mia was in trouble, but fear rooted her to the spot. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air thickened, panic surged. Laura's instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs felt glued to the ground. What if Mia needed her? As she peered deeper into the darkness, something glinted in the dim light. A knife? Or was it something else entirely? The man took a step toward Mia, and the tension was palpable. Whatever they were up to, it had taken a sinister turn, and just like that, Laura's world flipped. The secrets she had observed, the mysterious glances shared, they weren't just about her nanny anymore. They were about to unearth buried truths. She clenched her fists, heart racing, caught in a desperate pull between fear and curiosity. Did she dare interrupt this dangerous dance unfolding before her? What lay ahead could change everything she believed, but the fear of what she might discover twisted in her gut. Was this the beginning of a nightmare, or the chance to unearth a shocking truth? Laura's mind raced as she watched the scene unfold. The alley was thin, dark, and oppressive, the kind of place where nightmares were born. Her heart pounded louder than her thoughts, drowning out her instincts, urging her to run. Mia's voice broke through her fear, trembling yet resolute as she confronted the man. No, I told you, I can't do this anymore. Mia's voice shook, her eyes wide with desperation. The man took another menacing step forward. He was too close. Laura felt a primal urge to protect, overriding her fear. She couldn't bear to see Mia hurt. Gritting her teeth, Laura pushed herself off the wall, heart racing as she moved closer, her breath shallow and unsteady. The shadows threatened to swallow her whole, but she couldn't just stand there. Before she could even think it through, she burst into the alley. Mia. The desperation in her voice was unmistakable. The two figures froze, caught in their confrontation, their eyes snapping to her. The man's expression twisted, an ugly mix of surprise and fury. Mia, are you okay? Laura shouted, her voice echoing off the damp bricks. She wanted to run to her, but she couldn't take her gaze off the man's face, knowing the danger lurking behind those narrowed eyes. Laura, don't. Mia cried, her tone frantic now. You need to go back. It's not safe. The plea sent a shiver rippling through Laura, as if Mia were warning her of a storm brewing. Not safe? The man sneered, shaking his head. This is quite the show, isn't it? Look at you, playing the hero. His voice dripped with sarcasm, confidence radiating off him like a noxious gas. You really shouldn't have come here. Laura took a step closer, an invisible shield forming around her heart. What do you want with her? She demanded, clenching her fists to maintain some semblance of control over her fear. What is going on? He simply shrugged, his demeanor shifting to something almost amused. A simple business arrangement. Nothing more. Or less. He glanced at Mia, who stood there trembling, defiance in her eyes, but fear etched across her face. But now you've put yourself in the middle of it all. What business? Laura felt a heat rising within her, laced with dread. The darkness seemed to close in tighter, and her instincts screamed that she was teetering on the edge of a world she didn't understand. Mia turned to her, desperation swimming in her eyes. Please, Laura, just go. She begged. But it was too late. Laura's feet felt stuck in place, rooted by a mix of empathy and her growing resolve. The man stepped closer to Mia, an unsettling smile creeping onto his face. You think this is a game that you can just waltz in? Let me show you how serious this really is. He reached into his jacket. In that moment, everything shifted. Time slowed as Laura gasped, her heart in her throat, fear morphing to raw adrenaline. She had to act. She thought of her children, the warmth of their laughter, and the protective bond she felt as a mother. Without thinking, she lunged. Get away from her. The words escaped as a fierce command, and she knew she would fight, but before she could reach Mia, the man turned, brandishing a glinting object in the darkness, and a chorus of shouts rang out, the night fractured by chaos. Laura felt her heart drop. This was more than just a lie. This was a danger that could unravel everything she believed. And as sirens began to echo in the distance, a terrifying realization washed over her. What if this wasn't just about Mia? What if it was about something much bigger, something that could swallow them all whole? What lay beyond the shadows awaited new horrors. Would they be discovered, or was this danger just beginning? The moment Laura lunged, she felt suspended in time. The world faded around her, the sirens growing distant, as adrenaline surged through her veins. She didn't care about the danger that loomed over her. All that mattered was Mia. With a fierce scream, she charged toward the man, her heart hammering, her limbs working on instinct. But before Laura could reach them, the man sidestepped her, eyes gleaming with an unsettling mix of fury and amusement. You really shouldn't have done that, he hissed, the glinting object now clearly a blade, catching the sparse light. Laura froze, panic flooding her, but Mia was still in his grasp, eyes wide and pleading. Mia! Laura cried again, as she tried to focus. Stay back. The man stepped toward Mia, his body language shifting dangerously. You want to save her? You're going to regret that, he sneered, twisting the knife ominously in his hand, as if it were an extension of his monstrous intent. Suddenly, a loud crashing sound echoed from the other end of the alley. The sirens growing louder as police lights splashed against the walls of the narrow passage. For a split second, the man hesitated, his eyes darting toward the exit like a feral animal cornered. It was all Laura needed. Now, Mia, she shouted. Time warped as she lunged again, reckless but determined. She plunged forward, grabbing Mia's arm. With all her strength, she yanked her away from the man's grasp, adrenaline thrumming through her as they fell back, narrowly avoiding the man's swipe with the knife. Mia! They stumbled back, breathless and wild, but the man had recovered swiftly, rage twisting his features into a nightmarish mask. You want to get away so easily, he yelled, lunging forward. Laura felt the thrill of dread spike. Run, she ordered, shoving Mia towards the alley exit. She could hear the stomping of boots and frantic shouts outside, but she couldn't let the man reach them. As they darted down the alley, footsteps echoed behind them, growing louder. He's not just some thug, what does he want? Laura's mind raced. But then Mia whispered something that chilled Laura's blood. Laura, I think he's connected to the others, the ones I've been telling you about, she breathed, glancing over her shoulder. No. Laura shot back, her heart plummeting. We have to keep moving. But the revelation settled like ice in Laura's gut. All those strange moments she brushed off were adding up quickly. The whispers, the late-night visits, the men in dark clothes lingering outside Mia's apartment, they weren't coincidences. They burst out of the alley and into the street, the bright lights catching them off guard. Panic surged as they were met with the sight of police cars and officers spilling out onto the scene. "Over here!" Laura yelled, waving her arms, desperate for help. The man emerged from the alley, a final desperate growl escaping him. "You think this is over? You have no idea what you've stumbled into." As officers tackled him to the ground, Laura felt a flicker of hope, but tempered with dread. What did he mean? Mia looked at Laura, her face pale but fierce. "We have to talk. It's bigger than just him. Way bigger." The thought hung heavy between them as they were led to safety, a new fear pooling in Laura's chest. What dark web had Mia been tangled in? Just then, a chilling voice broke through the vibrant sirens, unmistakable and close. "You think you've won?" It was the man again, now pinned down but glaring with a reckless, manic energy. "You know nothing yet. This isn't just my game, you're in it now." As they were ushered toward a patrol car, Laura felt the weight of his words settle like a storm cloud above her. How deep did this rabbit hole go? The thrust of uncertainty pushed on her chest, heavy as she followed the officers. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever awaited them would uncover truths darker than she could ever imagine. Was this only the beginning of a much larger nightmare? Tension hung in the air, thick and heavy as the police led Laura and Mia away from the chaotic scene. Laura's heart pounded, each beat echoing the dread tightening around her throat. What did he mean? She murmured, glancing at the police officer beside her, who was too preoccupied with securing the scene to answer. The man's words replayed in her mind, relentless and taunting. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into." Mia, shaken, was struggling to regain her composure, her breaths quick and shallow. "I don't know, Laura, but I think it's worse than I thought." The patrol car's back door swung open, and the harsh light illuminated their faces, exposing the fear etched into Mia's expression. Laura climbed in first, the seat hard against her back, her eyes darting to the flurry of officers working to subdue the man now in cuffs. "Just tell me everything you know," Laura urged, her voice rising in urgency. The terror of the man's threats, mixed with the weight of the truth, began to smother her. "I can't lose you again." Mia swallowed, her gaze fixed outside. "I knew something was off. He was always around watching, lurking." "But I didn't think." She paused, shaking her head. "I thought it was paranoia. I was afraid of dragging you into it." "He's not just some creep, is he?" Laura interjected, feeling a pit form in her stomach. "You said he's connected to the others." "What others?" Mia took a deep breath. "They're SA group. They're organized. They follow people, manipulate them. They wanted me to keep an eye on you. I don't know why, but they've been watching us for a long time." Laura's mind raced, panic clashing with disbelief. "What? Why me? I don't understand. What do they want?" "Power, I guess," Mia replied quietly, her eyes suddenly wide, her voice thin like an ice sheet ready to fracture. "And I think I'm connected more than I realize. The things I heard. I tried to ignore them, but it's all starting to come together. I'm scared, Laura." Out in the street, a loud shout pierced the air, and Laura jumped, heart racing. The echo of that voice was chilling, but it wasn't just fear flooding her. Anger surged as well. "We can't let them control us. We have to find out how deep this goes and stop it." Mia nodded slowly, a flicker of resolve igniting in her eyes. "You're right. But we can't do it alone. They want to stop." "Not until what?" Silence fell between them, thickening like the fog around them. The patrol car's radio crackled, officers shouting commands, but their words turned into indistinguishable noise. "What if it's worse than we think? What if they target us?" Mia breathed, her voice dropping to a whisper, raw vulnerability cutting through the moments like a knife. "What if they've already taken others? What if before she could finish, the car door swung open again? An officer, breathless and frantic, leaned in. "We need to ask you both some questions. You might be in danger. Laura's heart sank further. She looked at Mia, the realization hitting her like a punch. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about everyone connected to the shadows lurking just beyond her vision. Mia, are you sure you want to keep going with this? She asked softly, weighing the fear against the necessity of action. I have to, Mia replied resolutely. We can't hide anymore. We need to know the truth and fast. The car doors slammed shut, and the low rumble of the engine purred to life. They were heading somewhere unknown, but that would soon change. As they pulled away from the scene, the man's chilling threats echoed in Laura's mind. This isn't just my game, they couldn't back down now. What terrible truth waited just ahead? The car jolted as it turned sharply, the sirens wailing like banshees. Laura gripped the edge of her seat, heart racing as the weight of Mia's words settled heavily in her mind. They've been watching us for a long time. What if they know we're here? She whispered, anxiety gnawing at her stomach. The shadows loomed larger with every passing moment, an unseen presence crawling closer to them in the darkness. Mia turned, urgency flashing in her eyes. We need to stay focused. When we get there, we have to keep our heads. No distractions. Laura nodded, trying to drown out the swell of uncertainty. The world outside the window blurred into streaks of light as they sped through the streets. Her thoughts spiraled, weaving in and out of nightmares she couldn't shake. The man's face, distorted with rage, flashed in her mind. You have no idea what you've stumbled into. An uncomfortable silence enveloped them as they drove, interrupted only by the commands crackling through the police radio. An officer's voice, strained and demanding, felt like it was urging them forward into a dark abyss. After what felt like an eternity, the car slowed, and the officer glanced back at them. We're here. Laura's pulse quickened. The location was a decrepit warehouse, crumbling concrete and shattered windows telling tales of neglect and decay. Fear wrapped around her heart like a vice as the officer stepped out, motioning for them to follow. As they exited the car, another officer approached, his expression grim. You'll need to answer some questions about what you saw. It's crucial. But even as he spoke, the back of Laura's mind screamed that there was more. The unease prickled at her skin, urging her to move, to act. Laura, look. Mia's voice cut through the fog of her thoughts, pointing towards a figure stationed in the shadows near the warehouse entrance. A tall man, wearing a dark hoodie, stood there, his head slightly lowered, but something about the way he hovered felt eerily familiar. Who is that? Laura gasped, clutching Mia's arm. It's him. Mia sounded shocked, and they both took a step back involuntarily. The one who was watching me. Before they could process the implications, the man lifted his head, and their eyes locked. An electric shock of recognition coursed through Laura. It was a face she couldn't shake from her memory, a face woven into the fabric of her past. Panicking, she whispered, "We need to leave. Now." But it was too late. The man smirked, an unsettling grin crawling across his face, and he stepped toward them with purpose. You two are getting a little too curious for your own good, he said, his voice laced with menace. In that moment, Laura felt the ground shift beneath her. Mia stepped forward, eyes fierce. What do you want from us? He laughed, a sound devoid of warmth, echoing against the cold concrete. What I want. You're about to find out just how deep this goes. Before Laura could react, the other officers reacted, their hands moving to draw their weapons. Step away from the girls. One shouted, but the tension had already spiraled into chaos. Laura. Mia screamed as the man lunged, and everything erupted into a blur of flailing bodies and shouting. Laura fought to stay focused, adrenaline surging through her veins as she tried to make sense of the unfolding nightmare. Then came the deafening crack of a gunshot. Laura's heart stopped, breath hitching in her throat. The world seemed to slow as she turned, frantically scanning for Mia, the other officers, and the shadowy figure who had already claimed her dread-filled thoughts. What had they stumbled into? As the dust began to settle, the chilling presence of an unseen threat loomed closer. And amidst the chaos, one question burned in their minds: would they make it out alive to uncover the truth? The air was thick, confusion buzzing like static as Laura's heart hammered in her chest. She turned back to the scene, trying to piece together the chaos. Officers were shoving the hooded man to the ground, but their shouts, sharp and urgent, seemed to drown out everything else. "Mia," Laura called, searching for her friend, but the swirl of people spun her around. Where was she? All at once, the echo of a second gunshot shattered the moment. It reverberated against the concrete walls like a death knell, sending tendrils of dread clawing up Laura's spine. She gasped, breathless, as the world erupted again in chaos. Laura spotted Mia, crouching low by a parked car, her face pale, washed in the flickering blue lights. Their eyes met, and for a brief heartbeat, they understood. They both felt the unseen weight closing around them, an impending doom that thickened the air. Another officer yelled, "Get back! Everyone move!" The male officers were pushing through, their faces set in grim determination. "What are we doing?" Mia shouted over the noise, her voice shaking. "Where do we go?" Laura swallowed hard, thoughts racing. "We need to find somewhere safe." But deep down, she felt the gnawing fear that there was no escaping this. She recalled the man's eyes, the twisted familiarity. Had he always been part of this? How much did they really know? The war cries and orders faded into a dull drone around them. As the chaos erupted like fireworks, "I'm going to die here." Laura's mind looped through desperate scenarios. They needed to act. "Over there." Laura pointed to an alleyway adjacent to the warehouse. Mia nodded, and they took off, sprinting toward the dim light that seemed to promise a way out. As they rounded the corner, a figure stepped into their path. "Stop." It was another officer, his eyes wide with urgency. "Where do you think you're going?" "Please, we can't stay here. They're coming after us." Laura gasped, fear spilling into her words. He hesitated, but just then, a crash reverberated from the warehouse. A door flew open. More shadows rushed out, their forms flitting between the debris. "Run!" the officer shouted, but the command came too late. The shadows surged toward them, fast like wolves in the dark. Laura's pulse skyrocketed as she and Mia bolted down the alley, the sound of their pounding feet mingling with the distant shout of officers. They cut through narrow paths, but the alley was a maze, brick walls rising up on all sides, hemmed in by desperation. "Do you think they know about us?" Mia gasped between breaths, her voice tremulous. "I don't know," Laura shouted, trying to suppress the tremor in her voice. "But we need to keep moving." Hope flickered for a moment when they spotted a narrow door at the end of the alley, dim light escaping through a slight crack. "That way," Laura urged, her legs pushing her forward, fueled by adrenaline. They burst through the door and stumbled into a small room. The interior was cluttered and dark, boxes stacked precariously, dust motes swirling in the spotlit corners. They pressed against the wall, trying to catch their breath. The door slammed shut behind them, but neither of them dared to exhale. Mia's eyes darted to the small window. "We can see if they're still out there," but Laura shook her head. "No, we can't afford to be seen." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed outside, heavy boots marching by, and a chill wound through Laura. They weren't safe yet. Why were they after us? What did we do? Mia whispered, panic creeping into her tone. Just then, a muffled voice broke through the tension outside. "They're here somewhere. We can't let them slip away." They held their breath, hearts pounding like war drums in their chests. It was only a matter of time before they were found. What was this all about? What had begun as a night of uncertainty was spiraling into something far darker than either of them had dared to imagine. Mia's voice was barely audible, fear flickering in her eyes. "What do we do now?" And at that moment, as they waited, the looming threat of darkness felt inevitable. Outside, menacing, shadows approached, and the realization crashed down on Laura. They had uncovered something they weren't supposed to, and now the true game was just beginning. Dark forces were at play, and it was far too late to back out. Who were these men really? And how far would they go to protect their secrets? The room felt smaller with every second they waited, each beat of Laura's heart echoing like a countdown. She could barely breathe, the tension wrapping around them like a vice. Moonlight filtered through the filthy window, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls, mocking their fear. Should we hide?" Mia suggested, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes wide with panic. No, Laura replied, shaking her head violently. If they come in here, we need to be ready. We can't let them catch us off guard. Outside, voices grew closer. Laura strained to make out the words, each syllable heavy with threat. Check every corner. They have to be around here somewhere. Laura exchanged a glance with Mia, understanding their fates hinged on the shadows. They won't stop until they find us, she murmured, a chill creeping down her spine. Mia's fear was palpable. What if they find us? A lump formed in her throat, and she glanced toward the door, the only barrier between them and the unknown. Then we fight, Laura said, bravely trying to push fear aside. Images of the hooded man flashed in her mind, twisting her gut. We have to know what we're up against. Just as Mia opened her mouth to respond, a loud crash split the frigid air, a violent jolt that sent tremors through the building. The noise came from somewhere near the warehouse, something breaking apart or being thrown. The world outside descended into confusion as men shouted. A fleeting thought struck Laura. What if it's the police? But another voice countered, deep and commanding, soothed with the power of authority. Stay in formation. They're not escaping us this time. Not cops, she whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. These men, they're something else entirely. A moment of silence fell, thick as fog, before footsteps echoed again, heavier now as if more bodies joined the pursuit. Laura's heart raced. This was the moment, the point where fear could either paralyze them or push them into action. Find something, Laura commanded, rummaging through the cluttered boxes. They might not have much, but they needed to arm themselves. Everything felt like a waiting game and time was slipping away. Mia swallowed hard and began rifling through the nearest box. What are we even looking for? Anything, Laura snapped, her panic simmering just beneath the surface. Something we can use as a weapon or to block the door. A flicker of movement caught Laura's eye, and she turned sharply. The rotting wood of the door rattled ominously at the hinges. They weren't alone. Mia. Laura's voice rang out, urgency spilling over. Get behind me. The door creaked again, a horrible sound. A single shadow shifted just beyond the glass, the silhouette looming larger as it approached. In a flash of instinct, Laura spotted a rusty pipe among the debris. She grabbed it, feeling its ridged surface dig into her palm. We're going to need to fight, Laura said through gritted teeth, crouched low, trembling yet poised for whatever lay ahead. The door burst open, sending a rush of stale air, and a figure filled the frame, a menacing man clad in dark, tactical clothing. But beside him stood another, an officer, his gun drawn. Get on the ground. He bellowed, voice fierce. Laura's heart sank, confusion spiraling. Wait. We know. The officer barked as the other figure raised something ominous, a baton ready to strike. Everything happened in a flash. Laura lunged forward, pipe swinging as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The officer's shout was interrupted by the thud of impact. It echoed loud, blending with Mia's terrified scream. Run! Laura yelled, but it felt like time froze. Were they already out of options? And then chaos erupted. The officer's desperate grip wasn't on control, it was a scramble for survival. The shadows at the end of the corridor grew, and the gnashing of fate drew closer. In her mind, Laura wondered if they'd just stepped into a trap laid bare. But before she could process it all, Mia let out a howl of anguish, and that sound sent Laura's blood running cold. Laura! All at once, the world turned. Upside down. What lay behind that door wasn't just danger, it might be their only path to freedom. Yet with each step forward, the shadows whispered promises of despair. And as their breaths quickened, what remained unseen loomed larger, a tempest gathering at their backs. What would it take to survive this looming nightmare? Would they unravel the truth or seal their fate by facing what lurked in the dark? Laura's heart raced as she darted through the door, the pipe still clenched tightly in her fist. Every instinct screamed at her to escape, but Mia's anguished cry sent a surge of terror through her veins. Mia! She turned back, her eyes wide, searching for her friend amidst the chaos. The officer was staggering back, seemingly stunned by the impact of Laura's desperate strike, But the other figure, dark and imposing, lunged at them with ferocity. "Get out!" Laura shouted. "No!" Mia's wide eyes darted between Laura and the advancing figure, fear and confusion battling for dominance. In that brief moment, time unraveled. "Stop!" the officer yelled, regaining composure, voice tinged with shock. "I said," before he could finish, the figure with the baton surged forward, swinging it with alarming precision. The metallic clang rang out as the baton connected with the rusty pipe, vibrating up Laura's arm. Pain shot through her, but she gritted her teeth, refusing to back down. With a wild swing of the pipe, she connected again, this time knocking the baton out of the dark figure's hand. It clattered to the ground, and for a split second, bewilderment flashed in their assailant's eyes. "Come on!" Laura yelled at Mia. She grabbed her friend's wrist, not giving her a chance to hesitate. They burst into the dimly lit hallway, heartbeats thundering in sync. As they sprinted forward, the sounds of chaos erupted behind them, the officer barking orders and the other figure cursing in frustration. Laura glanced over her shoulder, catching a glimpse of the officer raising his weapon. Her chest tightened, the weight of fear dragging her down. "Keep running," she urged, pulling Mia along. They tore through the warehouse, navigating the maze of crates and machinery, barely dodging the shadows lurking at the edges. Those men were close, hunting them without mercy. With every turn, every desperate leap, Laura's resolve hardened. "What do we do?" Mia gasped, her breath coming in jagged bursts. "We find a way out," Laura insisted, her mind racing. She spotted a small window at the far end of the hallway, barely big enough for them to squeeze through. It flickered like an unheld promise, but just as they neared it, a barrage of footsteps echoed behind them, threatening, relentless. They were gaining. Laura halted for a heartbeat, her gaze sweeping the cramped space. "We can't make it to the window." Mia's face twisted with panic. "Then what? I don't know yet." Laura snapped, but as her gaze darted around, she spotted a metal door partially ajar. That had to be their chance. "Over there." She pointed, and they sprinted toward the door in unison. It creaked ominously as they shoved it, slipping through just as a shadow blocked the passage behind them. On the other side, they found themselves in a dark storage room, cluttered with old boxes and furniture. The air was thick with the stench of mold and decaying wood, but it was a refuge if only for a moment. "Is this a dead end?" Mia asked, taking shallow breaths, fear etched on her features. "No," Laura said, glancing around. She needed an escape route. Her mind raced with possibilities as hope flickered faintly. Suddenly, a loud bang erupted from the door they had just come through. "They found us!" Laura's heart stopped. Laura, but before Mia could finish, the door splintered and the first figure appeared, an edge of victory glowing in their eyes. "Game over," he grinned, stepping through the threshold. With adrenaline surging through her, Laura's mind went into overdrive. She had to find something, anything, to fight back or escape. Every instinct screamed at her to survive. "Look for another way out," she ordered. But just as they turned, the floor rattled beneath them, and a low rumble began to echo, shaking the very ground. The walls felt alive, trembling as if the warehouse itself were a monstrous beast awakening. "Laura!" Mia cried, clinging to her arm. The lights overhead flickered, and in that moment, the reality of their situation hit hard. Would they be pinned by the storm of shadows closing in, or could the crumbling building offer them sanctuary or their demise? As the inevitable threat loomed closer, they faced a terrifying reality. This fight was far from over. Where would they go once the dust settled? And what would the shadows reveal if they dared to confront their fate? Time was slipping through their fingers. The choice before them was not just about survival, but choosing between light and darkness, and as the vibrations intensified, Laura knew they needed to decide now. Laura's heart thundered in her chest as fear pulsed through her veins. With Mia's fingers gripping her arm like a lifeline, she scanned the cluttered storage room for a way out. Boxes teetered precariously, their contents shrouded in darkness. The sudden rumble beneath their feet sent shivers rippling through her, but there was no time to linger on that fear. "Help me move this," Laura said, approaching the heaviest box to her left. It was dusty and looked like it hadn't even touched in years. She braced herself, grabbing the edge and grunting as she pushed against it. Mia rushed to her side, her breathing quickening. What if they get in? Then we'll have to make sure they don't. As she heaved the box aside, a glimmer caught her eye. It was a hidden passage, barely noticeable, concealed behind detritus. Over here. They stumbled toward it, hearts racing. Just as Laura reached for the edge, the loud crack of splintering would echoed behind them. The man had followed. He was close, and his presence loomed like dark thunder. Mia, hurry. The urgency in Laura's voice ignited a fire in her friend. Together, they slid through the narrow opening, forcing their way into a dark, cramped tunnel. As they crawled, dust kicked up around them, suffocating in its thickness. The narrow walls pressed against them, but there was no turning back now. Where do you think this goes? Mia panted, her voice muffled and tight with fear. Anywhere but here, Laura replied, her voice barely a whisper. They ducked low, moving as quickly as they could, the distant sound of footsteps echoing above them. Each footfall felt like a countdown to capture. The tunnel twisted and turned, and an eternity passed before they finally found a faint glimmer of light ahead. Laura felt a sense of desperation, mixed with determination surging within her. She could hear muffled shouts, the dark figure now aware of their escape route. The pressure was intense, and with every breath, the air grew thicker, emerging into what appeared to be another room, filled with forgotten machinery. Laura gasped. It's so abandoned, she muttered, scanning for exits. Then she spotted a door at the far end, though rusty. It looked promising. Mia, over there, she urged, pointing as she dashed toward it. They could escape. Freedom was close. Just as they reached the door, it creaked ominously. Mia hesitated, glancing over her shoulder, fear crackling in her gaze. What if it's a trap? Better than waiting to get caught. Now, with an adrenaline-fueled push, Laura thrust the door open, and they burst into a dimly lit alleyway outside. The night air was charged, filled with the sounds of distant sirens and muffled voices, but their victory was short-lived. A sharp shout echoed behind them. Stop! The officer's voice resonated through the alley, bouncing off the damp walls as he emerged from the warehouse. Panic clawed at Laura's throat, but instead of panic, she felt a wave of defiance. Run! She yelled, pulling Mia with her as they raced down the alley, their feet pounding against the pavement. Mia, this way. Laura skidded around a corner, heart racing, blood pounding in her ears. They were running blind, but the urgency pushed them forward. Suddenly, the alley narrowed, hemmed in by walls that felt like a trap closing around them. Where do we go now? Mia gasped, breathless and panicked. Anyone could be anywhere, Laura muttered, looking around. She caught a glimpse of a fire escape ladder leading to the rooftops. There was no hesitation. Up there. They scrambled toward the ladder, their muscles screaming as they climbed. Every sound echoed ominously beneath them, the shadows still lurking below. As they reached the top, Laura's heart raced not only from the climb, but from the uncertainty of what awaited them next. What lay ahead in this desolate city? Would they find allies, or more dark figures waiting to plunge them into despair? The night was alive, and the danger was far from over. Time was slipping away, but hope was still flickering in the distance. Could they outrun the shadows of their past, or would the hunt be just beginning? Laura and Mia stood on the rooftop of the old warehouse, the chilly night air biting at their skin. Below them, the chaos continued, police sirens wailing like banshees through the city streets. The city lights twinkled in the distance, unaware of the horrors unfolding just blocks away. Laura, breathe, Mia said, her voice raw but steadying. They both leaned against the rusted rail, catching their breath, hearts pounding like a drum in their chests. What if they find us? Laura murmured, fear creeping in even as determination surged. They won't, Mia reassured her, glancing over the edge. We just have to stay out of sight until the chaos below settles, then we can slip away. Laura nodded, but uneasiness sat like a lump in her throat. Mia, what are we really up against? This isn't just some random thug. It feels bigger than we are. Mia looked away, worry flickering in her eyes. I don't know, but I think the man we saw, he was connected to something sinister. Something that could cause real harm. The weight of truth hung heavy between them, a silent understanding that things would never be normal again. Just then, a loud shout echoed from below. They can't have gotten far. Split up and search the rooftops. It sent a shiver down Laura's spine. They were far from safe. We need to move, Laura urged, determination igniting. Find another way, maybe we can go through the next building. They quickly rushed toward the edge of the rooftop, scanning for options when a sudden noise caught their attention, a low creaking, like the groan of an aging beast. The fire escape they had climbed felt like a spider's web, fragile and poised to snap. Mia pointed. That way. The connecting rooftop. They sprinted toward the adjacent building. It had a teetering structure of old graffiti-tagged bricks, worn by time. The adrenaline buzzed between them as they took the leap, landing just in time to hear muffled voices growing nearer. Shut up. They can't be far. They know what we're onto. They will try to silence us. Panic surged again, their breath hitching as they ducked behind an air conditioning unit, peering down at two shadowy figures participating in the search. Their heavy boots echoed, footsteps growing nearer. Stay quiet, Laura whispered. The tension spiraled, but they had no choice. They had to move, and fast. Just then, Mia clutched Laura's arm, eyes wide. What if we find out someone else is involved? What if this goes deeper? Laura swallowed hard, the looming dread thickening her chest. Then we expose them. We gather evidence, we need to make sure they can't hide anymore. A plan began to form in her mind, igniting a flicker of hope, but it needed to be executed perfectly. We need to find out who's pulling the strings. If we can get proof, we can go to the police ourselves. Mia nodded, the flicker of hope igniting in her gaze. And then they want to be able to bury the truth. Not this time. With a renewed sense of purpose, they darted across the rooftops, navigating through the maze of steel and darkness, every corner revealing the hidden struggles they faced. Their spirits might have been heavy, but their goal was unwavering. They had to confront whatever might await them. In the shadows of the city, Laura found herself staring into the eyes of her past, those who wanted to keep them in the dark. But as fear gripped her, she felt something else, empowerment. What they were up against was bigger, but that only fueled her desire for justice. As they reached the towering remnants of an abandoned construction site, a flicker of hope swirled in Laura's chest. Signs of life could still be found. But they had to act quickly. Just as they were about to ascend one final stairwell up toward better visibility, a shadow rushed toward them, the unmistakable figure of the hooded man. Laura realized then, they weren't just hunted, they were now hunters in pursuit of the truth. Run! She screamed as they lunged through the door, adrenaline pumping, fear fueling their every move. Hurtling over broken debris, the shadows gave chase, but a fire had ignited within. Laura. Whatever awaited them, light or darkness, it would be a battle of their wills, both to unveil the truth and to escape with their lives. They couldn't turn back now. They would confront whatever this dark web contained and emerge victorious against the tide of shadows. As they climbed higher, determination surged stronger than the fear. Hope flickered, pushing through the darkness, for they had shed fear for resilience. They would find an answer. They would confront this sinister force that loomed over them. And as the night bore down, they sought the light that lay beyond it. Fierce and unyielding, they ran toward their fate together. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on the next exclusive story that will take you even deeper into the shadows. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happens next, and instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.